Welcome to our deep dive into the world of bisexual relationships. A lot of you have been asking about the dynamics, and we've got some seriously interesting data from ILGA Europe that might just surprise you. It all focuses on the gender distribution of partners among bisexual individuals, and trust me, it's not always what you'd think.
What I find so fascinating is how much this data challenges the stereotypes we often hear about bisexuality. The numbers paint a much more diverse picture than we might expect.
Right, and before we go any further, let's clarify what we mean by bisexuality. We're talking about attraction to more than one gender.
Exactly. It's not about this perfect 50-50 split or, some phase like some outdated ideas suggest.
No, not at all. And those stereotypes and biases, unfortunately, are still out there.
They are. So what we're doing in this deep dive is we're looking at the real-life relationships of bisexual individuals and seeing what the data reveals.
Data on the screen, numbers come alive. Male, female flows where the patterns thrive. Visual charts, public colors unify. Gender decoded, bringing truth to light. Watch them all drum fill. We break it down, real talk. Trends unveiling, facts from every block. Here's your insight, watch the data glide. Gender decoded, let the beats collide. We break it down, real talk. Trends unveiling, facts from every block. Here's your insight, watch the data glide. Gender decoded, let the beats collide.
Hey everyone, ready to get a little curious today? We're going to be doing a deep dive into bisexuality, specifically relationships.
Sounds fascinating.
We're looking at this article called The Gender Dynamics of Bisexual Relationships.
Okay.
And they've got all this data from Allergia Europe. We're really going to dig into who bisexual people are partnering with.
Interesting.
And you know what? I think we're going to find some interesting stuff about how society, plays a role in all this. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, bisexuality is often so misunderstood. There's so many stereotypes and biases out there, but data can really help us cut through all that noise and really understand people's lived experiences.
Yeah, totally. So let's jump right in. This article has these really cool pie charts. They break down the partners of different bisexual groups. And the first one is bisexual women.
Okay.
So get this. 47.3% of bisexual women are partnered with men.
Okay.
And 48.4% are partnered with women.
Wow, so almost a perfect split, huh?
Yeah, it's almost a perfect 50-50 split. It's pretty amazing.
It really is. It makes you wonder if it reflects societal expectations in a way. There's maybe less stigma for women being in same-gender relationships. And our culture seems more okay with, fluidity and female sexuality.
That's a great point. And it makes this next bit of data even more interesting.
Okay.
This is about bisexual men.
Huh?
55.3% are partnered with women.
Okay.
And 41.6% with men. So there's a bigger gap there, right? It's not as even. Why do you think that is?
Well, that's a really good question. It's a complex one for sure. Probably a lot of factors, right?
All right.
But one thing that comes to mind is societal pressure on men, to fit into that, what's it called, heteronormative mold.
Right.
There's still this big idea that men should be with women. And if they aren't, they face all this stigma, even hostility sometimes.
Yeah.
So that pressure might be why some bisexual men end up in relationships with women more, even if they're attracted to men too.
Makes you think about what they must be going through, trying to balance their own feelings with all that pressure.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about bisexual, non-binary people? What's the data say about their relationships?
Okay, so this is where things get really interesting. With bisexual non-binary individuals, we see a more even spread across the board. 38.2% are with men, 45.4% with women, and then, get this, 16.4% are partnered with other non-binary individuals.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's the highest percentage of non-binary partnerships we've seen so far. I mean, it seems like representation really matters.
Oh, absolutely. When you see people like yourself, in happy relationships, that can be so powerful. It gives you that courage to be yourself,
Yeah,
to look for connections that feel right instead of just following what society expects.
for sure. Okay, and lastly, we have intersex bisexual individuals.
Right.
Their distribution is pretty balanced too. 49.5% are partnered with women, 36.9% with men, and then 13.6% with non-binary partners.
It's pretty interesting, right? Both non-binary and intersex bisexual people have higher percentages of non-binary partners than bisexual men and women.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder if it's because they share those experiences of existing outside the traditional gender binary. Maybe that leads to a deeper understanding and connection and more relationships within that community.
It's like they're creating their own space where all those norms and expectations don't matter as much. They're just finding people who get them.
Exactly.
Okay, wow. That was a lot of data.
Yeah, we covered a lot.
What do you think it all means? What are the big takeaways here?
Well, one thing that really stands out to me is how diverse these relationship patterns are.
Yeah.
It just blows that whole misconception out of the water, that bisexuality is just being equally attracted to men and women. It's so much more nuanced than that.
Yeah, it's not about being perfectly balanced or something. It's about being attracted to more than one gender. And that can look different for everyone.
Right, exactly. This data shows us that there's a whole spectrum of experiences within bisexuality, and it's so important to recognize that everyone's journey is unique.
For sure. And I think these variations can tell us a lot about how society shapes how we see relationships and identity.
Yeah.
For example, those bisexual women and their near equal split in partners. It could mean that women have more freedom to explore same-sex relationships without all the stigma that men face.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It speaks to the power of those expectations and norms that society puts on us, how they can influence the choices we make in our lives. You see that reflected in the data about bisexual men too, right?
Yeah.
The gap between male and female partners. It might be because of those societal pressures to be traditionally masculine.
It really makes you think about how we can make things better. How can we create a world where everyone feels accepted?
Yeah.
Where they can be themselves without being judged or discriminated against.
Yeah.
And speaking of important questions, looking at all this data, it makes me think about the experiences of non-binary individuals. What are their challenges? And how do they navigate a world that doesn't always understand or recognize their identities? Maybe that's something we can explore more later. But first, I want to talk about some of the really cool insights that come out of this data. You ready for this?
I am. Hit me. Okay, well, one of the biggest things that jumps out is how common same-gender relationships are among bisexual people.
Right.
It really challenges that whole assumption that bisexuality is mostly about being attracted to the opposite gender.
Yeah, totally. It completely busts that myth. The data is right there. Same-gender relationships are a big part of the bisexual experience.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another really important point. Representation for non-binary folks. Remember how the data showed a higher percentage of non-binary partners for non-binary and intersex bisexual people?
Yeah.
That's not just random, It shows how crucial it is for people to see themselves reflected in the world around them. When you see others like you, living their lives authentically, finding love in relationships that feel right for them, that can be so empowering.
It's like it gives you permission to be yourself, to look for connections that feel authentic without worrying about what society expects.
Exactly. And speaking of societal expectations, the data about bisexual men and women, that was super interesting too, right?
Yeah.
It seems like men might face more pressure when it comes to dating the same gender.
Yeah.
That gap we saw in the data, with more bisexual men partnered with women compared to bisexual women partnered with men, it could be because of those pressures. We live in a world where being masculine often means being straight, and anything outside of that could be really tough.
It's sad to think about the internal struggles some people must go through. Feeling attracted to someone, but being afraid to act on it because of what others might say or think.
Right.
It just shows how far we still have to go to create a truly accepting world,
Yeah, we need to challenge those old ideas about what it means to be masculine and create space for men to explore their full range of attractions without feeling boxed in.
Totally. And then there's the flip side, right? The data showed a near equal distribution of partners for bisexual women. Does that mean society is more okay with women expressing fluid sexuality?
Maybe. It makes you wonder if those same norms that pressure men into being straight create a double standard where women same-sex relationships are more acceptable or even, fetishized. It's complicated, and it shows that we need to look at these societal forces from all angles.
We can't just focus on the progress that's been made without acknowledging those underlying biases that are still out there.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've uncovered all these interesting patterns in the data, but what's causing them? What factors are contributing to these differences in how people approach relationships?
Well, socialization is a big one. Think about it. From the time we're kids, we're bombarded with messages about how men and women should act. And that includes who they should be attracted to. Boys are taught to be tough, into sports, and, well, to like girls. Girls are taught to be nurturing, sensitive, and to like boys.
It's like we're handed a script to follow, and going off script can feel really scary, even if it means denying your true feelings.
Right. And those early messages about gender and sexuality can have a huge impact on how we approach relationships as adults. Like some men might feel pressured to ignore their attraction to other men because it doesn't fit those traditional ideas about masculinity.
And on the other hand, women might feel more comfortable exploring same-sex relationships because society sees it as more acceptable.
Yeah. It's important to remember that these are just general trends, though. Everyone's experience is unique, but there's no denying that these societal pressures play a role in how we understand ourselves and our relationships.
For sure. And it's not just about those external pressures either, right? There's internalized biphobia, too. That feeling of shame or self-doubt that comes from living in a world that doesn't always understand or accept bisexuality.
It's tough. Bisexual people are often rejected or discriminated against by both straight and LGBTQ plus communities.
Really?
Yeah. They might get told they're just confused or going through a phase.
Ouch.
And that can lead to feelings of isolation and invisibility. It's no wonder that some bisexual people might struggle to fully embrace their identity or feel comfortable pursuing relationships that feel right for them.
It's like they're caught in the middle, trying to find their place in a world that doesn't quite get it. That must be so hard, especially when you're still figuring out who you are.
It is. But even with those challenges, there's hope. The LGBTQ plus community has created spaces where bisexual individuals can feel seen, understood, and celebrated.
Yeah. Those supportive and inclusive spaces can be game changers. It's so important to have that sense of belonging and validation, especially when you've been marginalized or misunderstood.
For sure. And in those spaces, bisexual people can connect with others who get it, challenge those internalized feelings of biphobia, and build relationships based on mutual respect.
It's about building community and solidarity. That can be so powerful,
Absolutely. And that power can extend beyond individual relationships and inspire broader societal change.
Yeah.
The more visibility and acceptance we see for bisexual individuals, the more we challenge those limiting norms and create a world where everyone can love freely and openly.
We've talked about so much today, the complexities, the challenges of bisexuality and relationships, but what does all this mean for the future? What can we learn from this data to create a more inclusive and equitable world?
That's the big question, isn't it? What do these findings make you think about the future of bisexual relationships?
Well, it makes me think we need more education and awareness, We got to keep talking about this stuff, challenging those stereotypes and making sure bisexual voices are heard.
Yeah, I totally agree. Education is so important. It's how we break down those harmful biases and create a society where people understand and accept each other better. It's about recognizing that being bisexual is totally valid. It's a real identity, not just a phase or some kind of stepping stone.
Right, and it's about understanding that attraction isn't always black and white. It can be fluid, it can be complicated, and it doesn't always fit into those neat little boxes that society tries to put us in.
We got to get rid of those simplistic labels and binaries. We got to embrace the full spectrum of human experience.
Absolutely. We've made some progress when it comes to LGBTQ plus rights and visibility, but we still have a long way to go, especially for bisexual folks.
Yeah, we need to make sure there are spaces within the LGBTQ plus community where bisexual people feel truly supported and seen. And we have to challenge biphobia wherever we see it, inside and outside the community.
It's about calling out those harmful stereotypes and microaggressions that make people feel erased and invalidated, like, assuming someone's sexual orientation based on their partner, that kind of thing.
Right. And we need to push for policies and practices that actually protect bisexual people from discrimination in housing, healthcare, jobs, everywhere.
It's about creating a world where everyone feels safe to be themselves, no matter who they love.
It's about moving beyond just tolerating people to truly accepting and celebrating diversity.
It's about realizing that everyone's journey is different and valid, and that love is love no matter what.
And as we continue to push back against those old norms and build a more inclusive society, I think we'll see even more diverse and fulfilling relationship patterns emerge within the bisexual community.
It's exciting to think about a future where people can freely explore their attractions, connect with others, and build relationships that feel right for them without worrying about judgment or limitations.
It's definitely a future worth fighting for.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into bisexuality and relationships, I want to leave you with one last thought. We've looked at the data, we've talked about societal influences, and we've emphasized the need for progress. Now it's time to take all this and actually do something with it.
What stood out to you today? How can you challenge your own assumptions and help create a more inclusive world?
Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep talking about this stuff.
Because the more we understand and embrace the beautiful complexity of human experience, the closer we'll get to that world where everyone can love and thrive as their true selves.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Keep those minds curious, and we'll see you next time.